Pokemon Detective Pikachu is the live-action adaptation of the video games of the same name. This particular movie follows the story of the game Detective Pikachu for Nintendo 3DS, in which this story follows a young man named Tim Goodman, someone who learns that his estranged father has gone missing. Henry was a detective for the Rhyme City Police Department, and many of his coworkers feel that he actually has passed away due to the nature of the car wreck that he was in. And Tim, being the man that he is, not really caring too much about his estranged father, he doesn't really think much of the situation and he almost brushes this off until he meets Henry's partner Pokemon, a Pikachu, who somehow is able to understand Tim, in which Tim can also understand him back. Following that, an unlikely duo between this particular Pikachu, voiced by Ryan Reynolds, and Tim Goodman partner up in order to be able to find the truth behind Henry Goodman's disappearance and unravel an even bigger mystery surrounding some other shady backhanded deals and some other things that I won't spoil for you right now. Now, if anyone watched my review of Pokemon the first movie, you might be able to tell that, I'm not the biggest fan of Pokemon, but when I was a kid, I certainly was. I watched the show religiously. I loved the Pokemon Stadium games. I loved playing the Pokemon in the Super Smash Bros. Games. I also played a few of the main games as well. But nowadays I don't really have that strong of a pull to this series, and so going into this movie I was excited for something that I hoped would break the curse of the bad video game movies, but was still not really bringing my hopes up, both because of the source material, but also just we've been burned so many times with awful video game movies in the past that I didn't know if this was really going to change anything. The fortunate thing is that Detective Pikachu is much, much better than most video game movies that have come out in the past. I still wouldn't necessarily say it's particularly that good, but in the sense that we're trying to compare this to other films in the past that have adapted video games, what I appreciate about Detective Pikachu is that it is something that actually comes across as a labor of love. I've looked into some of the interviews with director Rob Letterman. From what I understand about his involvement with this project, I could really tell that he wanted to make a genuinely good movie, not just something that catered to Pokemon fans and kind of alienated everybody else. And that truly does come across here in every aspect of the production, especially the production design, the sets, just how everything looks. Rhyme City actually feels like its own location in which humans and Pokemon live together in a kind of a symbiotic relationship together. And you get certain ways that Pokemon are integrated into the environment, and it actually feels like a real place where people could live realistically. And I felt that, there was an authenticity to everything that was going on with this movie. I think it especially helps that the CGI for all the Pokemon is fantastic. A couple of the Pokemon designs are a bit awkward, but for the most part they are very faithful in staying true to the original designs of the Pokemon from the anime and the games, while also giving them a realistic sense to them all. Pikachu in particular has fur, and then you go to Charizard, who has like this scaly reptilian skin. Everything about these Pokemon has a lot of detail. Their eyes kind of reflect how their anime versions look, but also look a little bit more akin to what you'd expect a real-life creature to have. And the funny thing about that too is whenever you see like cartoonish versions of Pokemon, either on like big parade balloons or like street art or some other type of advertising material, they actually use the original anime designs, which I thought was pretty clever, and a way to pay homage to the original designs while also making something that would realistically work in a universe like this. So I would say that's probably the strongest positive of this movie, the fact that the cinematography is great, the action sequences are fun and engaging, the visual effects are also great, especially for the Pokemon themselves, and everything about the production just feels like they put not just money into everything, but also heart, love, and affection for these characters in this type of environment. The other major positive I have to give, which some of you might have expected already, but is undeniably the best part of this movie, Ryan Reynolds as Pikachu. I will admit it took a little bit of time for me to get adjusted into his character because, the first act of this movie is very dour and depressing, actually, more than I expected it to be. Once Pikachu's introduction into the movie takes place, there's definitely a shift towards more of like extreme fast quips that go like this every second or so. You can tell that his Pikachu was informed by Ryan Reynolds' performance as Deadpool as well, which, is a positive for sure. I mean, Deadpool was already an iconic character, but Ryan Reynolds definitely took it into his own, has made him more popular even now. And you can tell he's trying to do the same thing with Pikachu, not in the sense that he's trying to recreate what he did with Deadpool, but that he's actually giving a lot into his vocal performance. He also did the motion capture for Pikachu's face as well. In that sense, you can tell he had a lot of fun actually performing this character. It's just that at first there were so many quips and so many back and forth types of dialogue with his character that it was a bit hard to follow, and it was kind of jarring with the tone of the movie at that point. Overall though, I really enjoyed this character, and there's a lot to relish with him because he has a lot of screen time, and there's actually reasons for you to become invested in his emotional journey, how it connects to Tim, and there's some good resolution there, especially in how the film ends. As for negatives of the film though, there's plenty to talk about, and enough to where if someone really wasn't digging this movie, even to the point to where they actually hated it, I completely understand. The main thing being that this story is just pretty weak as a whole. As certain beats take place in the story, it's really obvious where the plot is going even from the very first scene. I probably put myself at a disadvantage because I saw Pokemon the first movie like a week before watching this, and elements of that plot were definitely integrated here. The unfortunate thing is that, these predictable plot points take place, and the movie tries to make it seem like it's this shocking sort of thing where you find out information about the story and you're supposed to have this like surprised reaction to it all. And for me, as someone who saw all this coming, that didn't work, and it made it kind of jarring when there were so many sequences to where, as characters, especially Tim, was trying to discover things about the mystery of this whole thing, there would be these long drawn out scenes of exposition where it goes between like holograms and flashbacks, and as someone who would have preferred less exposition and kind of use more visual storytelling to move the story along and let the characters experience things, I think that would have made the story a lot more efficient and more enjoyable, even if it was still predictable. However, I do have to make a point that a story doesn't always have to be surprising to be good. It can go through the predictable plot points as long as those plot points that are reached are satisfying to what the story is going for. And in some cases, that's how Detective Pikachu is. Even as certain beats were being played up and they're about to take place, I was like, okay, I hope the movie goes in this direction. And it did. So those moments were satisfying to me, and I didn't hate the fact that I could pretty much guess where the story was going. But when those beats happened, I was appreciative, and I liked ultimately where the story went. Otherwise, though, the human characters pale deeply in comparison with the Pokemon themselves. Detective Pikachu is the only one who you really get to know on an intimate level, obviously because he speaks. But just the characterization of all the humans, even Tim, they're not on the same level of depth. And with a lot of the performances given by the human actors, there's not a strong enough balance between goofiness, but also a serious dramatic take to make it all gel. I think Justice Smith was trying his hardest to give a good performance here, and I could tell that he really was working hard. I'll take his character in this over just his horrendous excuse of character writing in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. But still, I kind of felt like he was a weak protagonist and didn't really give enough of the movie to really balance things out with Ryan Reynolds that much. And Catherine Eaton as well, who I think has a future, and there's definitely potential in her character, but I think she just went a little bit too over the top with some of her scenes. Overall, what I can say about Detective Pikachu is that it's a very passable movie, one whose virtues are good enough to where I hope people will see the potential in future video game movies that could hopefully change things around to where people won't have this strong of a stigma against these types of films anymore. Filmmakers actually go out of the way to make the world more lived in and authentic, and the storytelling will be better. Not that Detective Pikachu is great by any means, but it does enough good things to where I hope people will take notice and things will make a shift from now on. With that, I'm going to be giving Detective Pikachu a C+. As far as an age recommendation goes, this is definitely made for kids, but I should at least let parents know that there is some mild language in this movie, spoken by Pikachu for the most part. If any parent doesn't want to see a cute, fuzzy little creature spouting off these words, then maybe you should look into Common Sense Media first to see what he actually says. There's also some crude humor here and there, but it's very subtle, and I think it'll easily go over most kids' heads. And the violence that is here, it's very minor as well. There's no on-screen death from what I can remember, and it's mostly just a fun time that kids can appreciate as well as adults. With that being said, I think this is okay for kids who are at least ages 9 and up, although my nephews who are both 7 and 4 enjoyed this movie, so who knows? That's just my personal opinion, but perhaps it might be okay for most kids. Thanks again for watching, guys. I appreciate you looking at this review as well as the Pokemon The First Movie Retro Movie Minute post. Look forward this week because there is going to be my ranking of the April 2019 movies finally, so please watch out for that when it comes out later this week. And I'm also going to be watching John Wick 3 later this week. I don't know if I'll actually be able to get a video out within the next few days, but there will be a post on that, I can guarantee it. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel, and then also check out my Facebook, Letterboxd, and Instagram pages for more content. And otherwise, thank you for watching. Have a good one.